Good morning, everybody. This is Diggs. It's another beautiful day out here in the Pacific Northwest, and today we're going to be continuing our series on elemental guides for War of the Visions. We'll specifically be talking about water units in this video. We're going to talk about what the must-have for water units are. We're going to talk about them in both a PvP and a PvE capacity. We'll also be talking about what's coming to water in the future. Let's go ahead and dig in. So, probably the very beginning of water, if we're looking back at kind of the history of the element, I would say it really started, with Glaciella. It started with potentially even, further back with Zazan, with the amount of memes that Zazan has. But, Glaciella, Miranda, they're kind of like the founding daughters of water element. I particularly remember Glaciella just being monstrous. And as time has kind of gone on, we've seen a couple other rebirths. And I think, with Ildira and Tidus, water really kind of became the mainstay of kind of like players returning to the game for a long while, because not only do you have access to free Ildira, you also had access to free Tidus with Final Fantasy X. Tidus is going to be coming out again. There's another Final Fantasy X banner coming out here soon, so you will have an opportunity to get him. And of course, now that we have Celeste out, we have Astrius that just released this week. Water is once again kind of moving into the forefront as a primary element, as powerful in both PvP and PvE, and you're going to see people talk a lot about this. So Ildira, these are in no particular order, but the water must-haves that I have on here, Ildira is a must-have for multiple reasons. One, she's free. Two, she's a calculator. And I mean, if you want a recipe for like a unit that you should have and max out, like free and calculator together in the same sentence, like that's, universally good. She has some niche applications in terms of, specific PvP, CT manipulation, compositions. She's just overall a great healer in PvE content. She's great in PvP. In PvP with those kind of niche comps. She's great in PvE, is what I was trying to say, because she has access to Water Slash. And a lot of the times, if you are going to be doing PvE content, you are going to try leaning in on Water Slash. So if you're a newer player and maybe you have Astrius and maybe you have, I don't know, Celeste or kind of one of these other water units that has access to Slash in their kit, you could kind of utilize Ildira to kind of bridge the gap to make a composition more viable. And I think that's kind of, she's just a universally good first unit that's kind of as the bedrock, I would say, for water. And I think, Tidus coming out, being free, having access to a 4-hit limit break, having access to defense down, he's this really powerful brawler, his attacks are ranged. Tidus just kind of came in and cemented that with Ildira for a very long time. And I think now that, we're seeing Astrius and Celeste come out, and maybe we'll start seeing some PvE Water Slash content, you're undoubtedly going to see Tidus making a return as well. So I think, when you talk about water, when you talk about kind of like the most used units in the game, Tidus was the most used unit in Arena for a very long time. And the developers actually talked about this. So I think no matter what, when you talk about the water elements and you talk about the must-haves, like Tidus mathematically is literally like the most popular unit in the game, from like half a year ago, and he's still very powerful. So I think these two are kind of the must-haves. Unfortunately, I think most of the other water must-haves are really limited. There are some other really good water units, specifically I think like Farm, I think about Raychess, right? And kind of, Lara Croft and Winter Victoria, even though they're limited, they're in other areas. Like there's other good water units that are, not limited, but I don't think they're must-haves. And I think most of the water must-haves come down to PvP. I think, when you're thinking about water right now, you're usually thinking about PvP, especially with Astrius and Celeste coming out. Aerith had come out recently. Before that, we have Summer Elsorel, who's come out as well. And you really very rarely think about water in terms of PvE, I would say. I think, having Tidus and having Ildira and having kind of access to a Water Slash, where most water units have access to Water Slash here, you very rarely actually worry. You can see just almost every single unit has access to slash attacks you very rarely worry about actually building a water slash PvE composition. And we'll kind of talk about the nuances of that here in the future, later in this video. But I think mostly, outside of Tidus and Ildira, you are going to want to focus on these limited units. Summer Elsorel is a little bit of an anomaly, I would say. She's a very weird unit. And she's not weird like bad in any way. She's just weird in that she's as powerful as she is. She's a unit that's kind of like this brawler, has access to guts, 100% hit. She can heal herself with geo absorption. She's kind of this, unique unit that was kind of thrown into water, and she's very powerful, but her synergy is kind of all over the board. And like, she herself is a very powerful unit, but it just seems like she doesn't have a ton of synergy with other units. And I feel like Summer Elsorel is one of those units we're going to see make a comeback with Astrius and Celeste kind of being in the mainstay, because she is so powerful and she has such capabilities. I think she's frequently underestimated. And just recently I took a lightning comp against a water comp, and the water comp had Aerith, it had Celeste, it had Summer Elsorel, and I almost died in a lightning comp against a water comp. So I think Summer Elsorel is 100% not to be underestimated. Astrius, of course, he's going to get 2 rows here because he is kind of the newest and hottest water unit. Great for both PvE and PvP. PvE wise, he lowers defense, he lowers slash resistance. This is really important because if you don't have Tidus, right? Lowering defense, you're going to have to pull and lower defense PvE wise from one of these other units, and that other unit is probably going to be farm. Water tends to have this problem where water has a problem lowering resistances of opponents, and so in PvE, if you don't kind of have the right combination of water units, you could find yourself struggling. So Astrius is one of 2 units that's lower slash resistance, which is pretty important. The other one being Winter Ramada here. And he lowers defense, which is going to make him very powerful in PvE. He has access to 100% hit for PvP. He has re-raise. He has re-raise Dispel. He's kind of a brawler. He also has access to missile attacks. And I think we may see him actually utilized in his missile attack capacity just a little bit. If only because the global side has Lara Croft, which she is another creature we'll talk about completely. Celeste, also released here, is a limited unit, and she has access to Runic, which is a very powerful ability, which, if you aren't familiar, basically absorbs magic attacks. She's powerful in that she can lower AoE resistance and spirit. My problem with Celeste that I have, she's very powerful in, PvP. She's very powerful in like tanking situations. I very rarely can kind of get her to deal damage or get her to kind of be in the right position at the right time to do the right things I need her to do. I think as a PvE unit, she kind of struggles. You may find situations where you need her, to maybe tank some hits. But I really think she's going to struggle in PvE content. She's really, like, if there's any other unit here that's here because of their PvP capability, it would be Celeste. Aerith. Aerith is, I'm going to be honest with you, not my most favorite unit. I'm not the biggest fan of Aerith, but I can recognize that enough people have had success with Aerith, enough people have really made Aerith work, that she definitely deserves a position here. She can take a hit, she can heal really good, she has access to re-raise, she has access to quicken. She's just overall a really good healer. A great way to think of her if you're returning to the game would be like Ayaka 2.0. Very unique. I really struggled with putting her here on the must-haves because I feel like she's not a must-have. I actually think someone like Farm would probably deserve this spot a little bit more, just because Farm offers so many things universally PvE-wise to the composition, and I think Farm is one of those units who may one day in the future kind of, surprise all of us with a second mastery to kind of walk into like the mainstay of water comps. But I just decided to kind of honor what everybody kind of talks about with Aerith and put her here on this list. She's one of those, this is one of those few times where I will, even though I've had bad experiences with her, I will kind of take the community at their word on her. Lara Croft. Lara Croft is a global exclusive unit. It has an amazing TMR. not necessarily for its abilities, but just for its stats. Lara Croft is limited, and we don't know if she will ever come back to the game. Particularly with Eidos Montreal and Crystal Dynamics being sold off. It's definitely a conversation point people have had right now. I don't know if she'll ever come back to the game. I think if she does return, you shouldn't pull for her. Similarly, I actually think you shouldn't pull for Winter Victoria. And there's a couple of reasons for this. One, if you're trying to set up a water PvP composition, Missile is viable if you have Lara Croft and Winter Victoria. And again, we have Astraeus on the global side. But I think Winter Victoria on her own doesn't offer much. And I think Lara Croft on her own doesn't offer much as either. Lara Croft, of course, is an evasive unit, so she can kind of pair with farm. So you might see a water evasion composition one day in the future with her. But I feel like, you know, these units here, particularly Winter Victoria and Lara Croft, they kind of create their own comps, right? They kind of, like, they created the water missile composition. And I feel like water as a whole, you know, even though we have Krace, even though we have Farm, who have access to missile-based attacks, right? Astraeus with missile-based attacks, I feel like they don't necessarily have the tools to make missile successful. You see Lara Croft and Winter Victoria have a lot of self buffs. You see them have breaks to lower movement and attack and magic, but they don't necessarily have the stay power to like kill the opponent, and they don't have the breaks to weaken the opponent either. So even if you try to take, you know, Lara Croft or Winter Victoria into PvE content where it's Trials of Reckoning or Guild Raid, you're going to run into the problem where you don't have the capability to lower missile resistance, right? You don't have the capability to lower defense with them. You don't have the capability to lower water resistance with them. And you're going to kind of enter into this problem where you just can't deal enough damage. And that's been, you know, my history, I think, with Lara and Winter Victoria. I do think they're like good and fun units, and you can definitely make water missile work if you kind of push it really hard and you have kind of a very tenured account. But I think for the most part, people should probably stay away from them, and I definitely don't think they are must-pull units. Winter Ramada is another limited unit that is interesting. She's the only other water unit that really has access to lowering slash resistance on your opponent with their limit break, so she can lower it by 38. She has access to sub soldiers. She has access to Dream Within a Dream and sub ninja, so she's going to have, you know, additional movement. She'll be able to get in and deal damage. You know, I've never been able to get her to work super effectively in PvE content. She's been kind of the unit that always dies. Very similar to Stern before his second mastery upgrades, or back when we only had like Stern 99 and you kind of were almost like forced to put Stern into like a Dark Slash composition before we had all of these Dark Slash comps. She's just not beefy enough. Now, she does get a little bit of beef with her second mastery, which should be coming here in the future. And it is important to note that she will hit cap damage, and she does have some very powerful PvE abilities, so I have hope for her, but she's always been on the back burner for me. So if that's something you feel like your water composition needs and you kind of see her released, definitely consider that for your comp. Just make sure you have the tools to make her survive. Miranda, talking about the OG, one of the OG water units, Miranda recently got her 120, and she had magic reflex. She can dispel re-raise. She can lower spirit by 38. She has access to quicken if you sub her time mage. She has access to guts if you sub her paladin. You know, she kind of has it all. She also has really beefy resistances. Miranda, for me, she's a really fun UR unit. She very rarely is useful in PvE. And I would say very rarely useful in PvP as well. Even with her dispel re-raise, I don't think Miranda is going to be worth it for you to invest in. I think she'll probably, you know, she's already kind of fallen off. She was definitely good back in the day. And even PvE wise, yes, she does have access to the water slash abilities, but like her capability to lower spirit by 38 is actually a pierce ability. And her slash abilities are pretty, you know, they're either high AP consumption or close range is kind of how you can describe them. So she's not going to be the most versatile unit for you in PvE either. Raychess is the select quest unit, and she is essentially free because of that. And Raychess kind of suffers the same way that Lara Croft and Winter Victoria suffer for PvE, is that she has all these really amazing breaks. She can break agility, attack, magic. She has a 2x hit. She has a plus 30% hit, but she doesn't have the capability of really lowering the stats of the opponent. And, you know, this is something where you can imagine, because we've been talking about this as we're going through, you know, all of these water units don't really seem to have the capability to break stats on the opponent. So what happens when you have a water composition and you're unable to break those stats, right? You can't break the important stats like slash resistance, defense, right? You know, you can't lower water resistance if you don't have the right combination. So she's one of those units that's really powerful. She's really great with water slash units, but she's really, especially in PvE, going to really need like Tidus to lower defense, or, you know, really pair with other water slash units to kind of fulfill her purpose fully well. Otherwise, you may be better off, you know, probably going for a rainbow slash composition opposed to this. Like, you know, you really need those debuffs in order to hit that cap damage. Now, Farm, this is the other unit that I wanted to put as a must pull. But I feel like if I listed her as a must pull, it would probably do a disservice to a lot of players, because she's not necessarily a meta-based unit in PvP at all. People do use her, they mess around with her, but you're never going to see Farm at the top. Maybe we will with Astrius and Celeste, but she has access to Reflex. She has, of course, Dream Within a Dream, 3x hit attack. She has Dispel Guts and Dispel Re-Raise. She can lower defense and spirit by 30, and she can lower water resistance by 25. She has access to missile attacks, so she synergizes really well with a lot of water units, and she is very much a core PvE kind of water slash unit now. I think the biggest problem with Farm is that Farm was released after Tidus. Farm was released after, you know, Winter Ramada. So for a lot of people in PvE, they already had water slash, they get Raychess, right? You know, maybe they have, you know, potentially, you know, Ildira, and they have Celeste or Astrius. They maybe don't want to invest the resources into Farm, and I can understand that. But I think Farm is just an incredibly powerful unit if you ever want water slash to be successful. And the reality is, though, too, water slash was successful before Farm came out. So definitely one of those things where I struggle, you know, if we're trying to talk about like the future, like new players coming into the game, Farm is definitely a powerhouse. But if you already have that water slash comp built up, because you have Ildira, you have Tidus, and then you just kind of have this variety of other water slash units, you may not need her. Glaciella had her heyday back in the day, and she's unique. She has a triple hit, she has access to stun, she has 100% hit. You're very rarely going to see her nowadays. She kind of had the niche of like damage up from her limit break, which was pretty cool. But nowadays, even with her secondary masteries coming out, I don't think we're going to see, you're probably just going to get the new version of Glaciella, if we're being honest. Like, we already know there's a new version of Mastery coming out on the JP side. We know there's going to be a new version of Glaciella as well. So Glaciella is kind of fallen off, and if you're ever going to run Water Pierce, which is really hard to pull off, I would say, then you would use her. But honestly, like, Water Pierce is so rare. I can look here just going through, like, you're going to need like Ramada, you know, Glaciella, and probably like Miranda with her spirit lowering ability. You know, you'll probably need Tyrell. It's not gonna happen. So just keep that in mind. More you do see a little bit more often. More also has a good TMR for auto farming Faith. More has access to magic reflex, and what I love about More is More has access to Calamity Guard, which is really powerful. She has 100% hit because she's Kododama main job. She also, with her limit break, can lower water resistance by 38. Being able to lower water resistance, right? The other sources of water resistance lowering, we have Farm's limit break, which lowers water resistance by 25, and I believe that might actually be it. So Having the capability to lower water resistance, particularly for PvE, even though she doesn't have access to slash attacks, can be really powerful, and she can hit that cap damage. Like, I would rather have more so that she could lower water resistance than run another water slash unit. Just because that lowering of the water resistance will probably get you more damage from the chains overall. In terms of MR units and below, you know, these are actually kind of listed in order. And I actually think Zazan is one of the more important units to have leveled, particularly for water select. I've really enjoyed Zazan, and he's one of the few units in the game that can actually hit movement 5 innately, which is quite incredible. He has Steel Heart, he has Steel Time, and what I always tell people is, you know, we make fun of Zazan, he's a meme, but like when you actually need Zazan, like when you're doing select quest and you actually put him in, he's doing work that is higher than that of any of the other MRs. It's remarkable when you actually try and use him in select quest, how much more powerful he is than the other MR units, and he's rated as an N unit. So especially if the enemies are humanoid, because he gets a lot of modifiers for Maneater, he is just a force to be reckoned with. And there were multiple missions in Water Select where I was able to move Zazan into position because of his high move and his high jump as well. And like, that was the reason I won those Water Select missions. So I'm a huge fan of Zazan. And of course, Steel Heart Cheese, right? If you're trying to do like manual PvP or, you know, just have some fun shenanigans, he's great for that as well. Ramada, I give Ramada a hard time, but I think when you're comparing her to the other MR and below units, she does line up pretty well. She has access to some pretty powerful dispels. She's a very crit focused unit. She has Steel Time. She is the only water unit I have that's not Yexed. I kind of focused on the other water units, but I think a lot of people have a lot of success with her. I know Oran J is a huge Ramada fan, especially because she has that mole on her thigh. Crais is a unit that is not amazing, but she's free. She has access to jump break. She has a 2x hit attack. And especially if you're trying to work synergy with like Lara Croft and Winter Victoria at all in like a PvE capacity, that can be useful. So I would say Crais is another, especially in select quest, she's pretty powerful. Severo is unique. I think Severo, I have my Severo leveled. He has Magic Reflex, he has Guts, he's a pretty fast caster. I think he's maybe not as powerful as Uni, but I personally have used Severo a lot. Uni has access to Reflex, Dispel, Movement Break, has 100% hit attack, but you're really gonna lack damage on Uni, so things to keep in mind there. You will utilize Uni for like status ailments though. So I believe it's going to be like Shadowbind and Poison are going to be really important. And then finally at the bottom you have Tyrell. Tyrell I don't even have level 99 because okay, a fun story about Tyrell. Tyrell is one of those units where the first time his event came around, I cared so little about him I didn't even farm his shards. And then when his event came around again, I forgot to farm his shards. And then when his EX came out, I forgot to farm his shards again. And his event is going right now, and I am literally just not interested in farming his shards. So that should kind of paint a picture of how useful Tyrell has been over the ages. Now, speaking about Tyrell, since we're talking about the future water element, Tyrell's VC is coming out. Now, I think it's possible we're going to see a global exclusive buff for this vision card. This is pretty much the only thing that's coming out for water. This is pretty much the only element that people are, that we're like, there's no other water units coming out. There's like speculation that the next global exclusive is going to be water. You know, nobody really knows. All we know for sure is this VC is coming out. And this VC is going to come out like next week. It's going to be really soon that this VC is coming out. It's going to give the individual unit acquired AP up 30%, attack plus 10%, party-wide. It's going to give accuracy up 25, which is very powerful for water right now. It's going to give water attack plus 18. Maxed out, it's going to give water resistance plus 20. It gives agility 3 on the vision card itself. I think we're going to see this VC being used, especially with Astrius, and I wouldn't be surprised if Astrius got some type of global exclusive buff on this, and I think this VC is going to be pretty important overall. Anyway, everybody, this is Been a great time. It's going to be a very long video. For those of you who made it to the end, I hope you guys enjoy this long style of content. I have 2 more elements to cover. We have to cover, I believe, maybe it's 1 more. No, I have to cover earth and I have to cover fire, I believe, are the last 2 elements I have to do. So look forward to those coming out in the future, and I will catch you guys next time.